Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to be exploring analytic activism
Ooh.
and how it's changing the way that political campaigns and advocacy work in the digital age.
Okay.
And our source material for this is Will the Revolution Be A/B Tested?
Mm-hmm.
By David Karpf. He's a scholar of digital politics.
Okay.
And we'll be focusing specifically on chapters 1 and 2.
Gotcha.
Um, have you ever wondered, if those online actions,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
the likes, the shares, petition signatures,
Mm-hmm.
do they actually lead to real-world change? That's what we're diving into today.
Oh, that's a great question.
It is a great question.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to have you here to talk about it with me because
Yeah.
I think this is something that a lot of people wonder about. And I know I've definitely seen that shift.
Right.
I remember a few years ago, I went to this big environmental rally in D.C. for Step It Up.
Okay.
It was all over the internet, but the turnout was surprisingly small.
Oh, wow.
Even my parents, who are super politically active, had never even heard of it.
Oh, wow.
And it just made me wonder, does online buzz really translate into offline action?
Yeah, you've hit on a key point there. And I think Karpf in the book, he talks about that there's a distinction between
Yeah.
passive online sentiment and active engagement. And he defines analytic activism
Okay.
as having 3 core features.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are those 3 features?
So the first one is a culture of testing.
Okay.
So campaigns are now using data to test which strategies and messages are most effective.
Mm-hmm.
You can almost think of it like A/B testing email subject lines,
Right.
but applied to every aspect of a campaign.
Okay, so instead of just going on gut feeling, they're using data to try and
Correct.
make more strategic,
Mhm.
more informed decisions.
Yep.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. What's the second feature?
The second one is prioritizing digital listening.
Right.
And this basically means analyzing online data to understand what people care about,
Yeah.
what motivates them, and what they're talking about.
So it's not just about broadcasting the messages. It's about also listening to what your audience is saying
Exactly.
online
Yeah.
and tailoring your approach accordingly.
Exactly.
Cool. Okay, what's the third one?
So the third one is operating at scale.
Okay.
So analytic activism requires large audiences and extensive data sets
Right.
to be truly effective.
It's got to be big in order for it to work.
Yeah, so think of organizations like Move On or the Obama campaign.
Mm-hmm.
They have the reach and the data to actually make a real impact.
Yeah, one person clicking a link doesn't really tell you much.
Exactly.
When you have millions of data points, then you can start to see real trends.
Yeah.
Okay, so then that brings up another question, though, what kind of data is more valuable?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Right. Is it internal data that an organization collects about its own audience?
Mhm.
Or is it external data about broader online trends?
I think both are valuable, but I think internal data can be very useful
Okay.
because it provides insights specific to your audience.
Hmm.
So their demographics, interests, and how they're responding to your messages.
Makes sense. And so that brings up another big question.
Mm-hmm.
Do all those clicks and likes and shares,
Yeah.
do they actually reflect public opinion?
That's a great question because I know I've liked posts on Facebook and not really cared about them that much.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
So what does it really mean?
Right.
And I think Karp argues that social media analytics offer a glimpse into what he calls activated public opinion,
Okay.
which is different from more passive opinions captured in traditional polls.
So you're saying my mindless Facebook likes are a form of political expression?
Perhaps not mindless,
Okay.
but a different type of expression.
Okay.
Because traditional polls capture opinions that people give when asked directly, whereas social media reveals the opinions that people actively choose to share even without prompting.
Oh, so that's interesting. So someone might have an opinion on something
Yeah.
if a pollster asks them about it,
Right.
but they might only post about it online if they feel strongly enough to actually share it publicly.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
Yeah. But it's also important to remember that platforms like Facebook and Twitter,
Yeah.
they're not representative samples of the entire population.
Right.
And algorithms can influence what content people see.
Yeah, that reminds me of something that Evgeny Morozov, the technology critic, said.
Okay.
He said public opinion is when you show up to vote,
Right.
not just a collection of Facebook groups.
He has a point.
Right. There's
Yeah.
online activity can provide valuable insights into what people are thinking and talking about,
Yeah.
but it's not the whole picture.
Exactly. And there's always that risk of manipulation, too.
Yeah.
For example, during the Ferguson protests,
Mm.
algorithms on different platforms influence what content people saw, which shaped their perceptions of the events.
So it's We can't assume that everything that's trending online
Yeah.
is an accurate reflection of like what people are really
Of reality,
then
public sentiment.
of public. Yeah. So while social media analytics can be very insightful,
Yeah.
we need to approach them with a critical eye.
Absolutely. And, I'm sure some of our listeners might be wondering about the ethics of all of this data collection.
Yeah, for sure. Is it even ethical for advocacy groups to be gathering and analyzing all this data?
It's a valid concern, but Karpf argues that analytic activism by advocacy groups
Right.
presents different ethical considerations compared to, like, government or corporate surveillance.
Okay, so how is it different?
Well, I think for advocacy groups, they're focused on, like, mobilizing support for a cause
Yes.
and creating positive change.
Hmm.
They typically aren't in a position of power over individuals,
Okay.
and their goals are usually aligned with, like, public benefit.
Okay, that makes sense. But then couldn't that type of data be misused?
Mm,
What if, like, a politician's office used voter data
right.
to prioritize services for their supporters and neglect the people who didn't vote for them?
That's a great example of how the same data can be used for good or for bad.
Right.
And Karpf provides this 5-variable framework
Okay.
for assessing the ethical risks of digital listening.
Ooh, a framework.
Yeah.
Tell me more. Tell me more.
So the first one is actor identity.
Okay.
So who is using the data and what are their motivations?
Mhm.
Are they a government agency, a corporation, an advocacy group?
Mhm.
Because each has different levels of power and potential for misuse.
Right. So it's not just about the data itself.
Yeah.
It's about who has it
Exactly.
and what they might do with it.
Yeah, what are their motivations?
Okay, so what's the second variable?
So the second one is potential harm.
Okay.
So what are the possible negative consequences
Yeah.
if an algorithm makes a wrong decision or the data is used unethically?
Right. Could it lead to discrimination or manipulation or a loss of privacy?
Exactly. And so it's important to be mindful of those potential harms,
Yeah.
even if they're unintentional.
Yeah, what's the third one?
So the third one is approximate transparency.
Okay.
Can the reasoning behind an algorithm's decision be explained? Okay.
Is there oversight to ensure that it's being used fairly?
So it's not just about whether the data is accurate, it's whether we can understand how it's being used and why.
Exactly.
Okay.
The fourth is data quality.
Yeah, okay.
How reliable and accurate is the data being used?
Yeah.
Where did it come from and how was it collected?
Right. Garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. And then the fifth one is potential redress.
Okay.
What options do individuals have if they believe they've been negatively affected by an algorithmic decision?
Okay.
Can they challenge it? Is there a process for correcting errors?
So there's like mechanisms for accountability and fairness.
Exactly.
Okay. That makes sense.
So taking all those variables into account,
Yeah.
where do you think analytic activism falls on this ethical spectrum?
That's a great question. I think it seems like advocacy groups using data to understand their supporters and make their campaigns more effective might be less risky
Yeah.
than, say, a government agency using data to like track citizens.
Yeah. But I'm sure there are still potential pitfalls.
You're right. There are always potential pitfalls when it comes to data.
Okay.
But before we dive into those, let's shift gears a bit and talk about another aspect of analytic activism.
Okay.
The rise of online petition platforms.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So Karpf examines how the growth of platforms like change.org
Okay.
and MoveOn petitions has changed the landscape of online activism. These platforms have made it incredibly easy for anyone to start a petition and gather signatures.
Yeah, I've definitely signed a few petitions myself.
Yeah.
But are they actually effective?
Ooh.
Do they actually lead to change?
It depends. It's a complex question, and the answer depends on a lot of different factors, including the platform itself and how it uses analytics.
Okay.
Karpf actually did a fascinating analysis of change.org and MoveOn petitions.
Oh, okay. This is getting interesting.
Yeah.
What did he find?
So he looked at 6 months of data from both platforms and discovered some key differences in their approaches. For example, change.org supports a much wider range of petitions,
Okay.
from very local individual issues to massive global campaigns.
Cool.
MoveOn petitions, on the other hand, is more focused on petitions that align with their progressive political agenda.
Okay, so change.org is more like a catch-all platform,
Yeah,
and MoveOn is more targeted in what they actually promote.
exactly. And that difference is reflected in how they use analytics.
Okay.
So change.org prioritizes petitions that are likely to go viral,
Okay.
regardless of the issue or the
Yeah.
likelihood of success.
Okay.
They really seem to be looking for clicks and shares above all else.
It almost sounds like they're treating petitions as a form of entertainment,
Yeah.
like rather than a tool for social change.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah.
And this approach has led to criticisms that change.org is promoting clicktivism,
Okay.
petitions that people sign to feel good but don't actually lead to any real-world change.
Right. It's easy to click a button, but does it actually make a difference?
Right.
So how does MoveOn petitions use analytics differently?
Move-on petitions seem to be more strategic.
Okay.
They're not just looking for viral petitions.
Right.
They're looking for petitions that align with their political goals
Hmm.
and are likely to generate real political pressure.
Okay.
They use analytics to identify petitions that have the potential to make a real impact.
Okay, so their approach to using these petitions reflect their broader organizational goals.
Exactly.
They're not just about gathering signatures, they're about
Yeah,
building a movement and wielding political power.
exactly.
Yeah.
And this brings us back to the importance of understanding the motivations and the
Right.
strategies behind the platforms we're using.
Yeah, it's a great reminder that not all petitions are created equal,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
we need to be very discerning consumers of
Yeah.
information and online activism.
Yes, I agree.
But speaking of information,
Yes.
I want to circle back to the power of analytics
Mm-hmm.
in shaping how information spreads online. And Karpf actually dedicates an entire chapter to Upworthy.com,
Okay.
which is this website that has really mastered using analytics
Yeah.
to make important content go viral.
Yeah.
I know them.
I know them.
They're the ones with the super clickable headlines.
Exactly.
Right,
Yeah.
like the ones that make you stop scrolling.
They are a fascinating example
Right.
of how the strategic use of analytics can really change how information spreads online.
So how do they do it?
Yeah.
What's their secret?
So first, they're really good at identifying content with the potential to resonate with a wide audience.
Okay.
They call these pieces of content seeds.
Okay, so they're looking for stories or videos or articles that are inherently shareable
Yes.
and tap into people's emotions.
Exactly. And then once they've found a seed,
Okay.
they test it rigorously
Mm-hmm.
to find the most effective way to present it online.
So this is where the A/B testing comes in, right?
Yeah.
Like they're trying different headlines, different images,
Different descriptions.
different descriptions, seeing what gets
Gets the most clicks and shares.
the most engagement.
Exactly. They're masters of A/B testing.
Wow, and their success challenges this long-held assumption
Mm-hmm.
about online political discourse.
Okay.
This idea that we're all trapped in these echo chambers
Right.
and only consuming information that reinforces our existing beliefs.
Yeah, the filter bubble.
The filter bubble, right?
Yeah.
So are you saying that Upworthy is using analytics to break out of those filter bubbles
Yes.
and reach people with content that challenges their perspectives?
Exactly. And they're doing it on a massive scale.
Wow.
They've reached millions of people with content that they might not have otherwise seen.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It seems like they're harnessing the power of analytics
Yes.
to really shape the online information landscape.
They are. And they're showing that analytics can be used for more than just targeting and mobilizing existing supporters. It can be used to reach new audiences and broaden the conversation.
That's really cool and kind of a hopeful message.
Yeah.
It suggests that the internet can be a force for connection and understanding,
Yeah.
not just division and polarization.
Yeah. It's a very powerful reminder that the internet has the potential
Yeah.
to connect us with people who think differently than we do.
So how does all of this connect back to analytic activism?
Mm-hmm.
What can we learn from Upworthy's success?
I think Upworthy provides a valuable lesson for political campaigns and advocacy groups.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to experiment.
Okay.
Don't assume you know what will resonate with people.
Okay.
Test different approaches and messages, and use data to inform your decisions.
So it's about being strategic and data-informed,
Yes.
but also creative and willing to try new things.
Yeah. And don't underestimate the power of emotions.
Oh, yeah.
Upworthy has shown that content that connects with people on an emotional level is much more likely to be shared and go viral.
So it's not just about the cold hard facts.
Yeah.
It's about telling stories that resonate with people's hearts as well as their heads.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So it seems like there's a lot that we can learn from Upworthy.
Yeah.
But I think it's also important to remember what we talked about earlier
Yes.
about the analytics frontier.
Oh, right.
Right? Like, there are some things
Yeah.
that analytics just can't measure,
Exactly.
such as the long-term impact of a campaign
Yeah.
or the complex social and political dynamics
Yeah.
that shape our world.
Absolutely.
So we need to be careful not to over-rely on data
Right.
and lose sight of the bigger picture.
Yeah, you can't just look at the numbers
Right.
and ignore everything else that's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Data can tell us a lot, but it can't tell us everything.
Yeah.
We need to use it in conjunction with human judgment,
Mm.
critical thinking,
Yes.
a deep understanding of the issues that we're
Yeah.
trying to address.
It's about finding that sweet spot where data and human insight intersect.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
It's good.
And this is especially important when it comes to the ethics of using data in political campaigns.
Yeah, we were talking about the ethical considerations earlier,
Mm-hmm.
and that 5-variable framework
Yeah.
that Karpf outlined.
Let's revisit those 5 variables.
Okay, yeah, hit me with them. What are they again?
So the first one is actor identity.
Okay.
Who's using the data? What are their motivations? And I
Okay.
think we need to be particularly wary of government actors using data in ways
Okay.
that could infringe on our rights or undermine democratic processes.
Yeah, that's kind of scary.
Yeah, what if a government agency uses data to target individuals with propaganda or misinformation?
That's scary.
Or they use data to suppress certain groups from voting?
Ooh, that's a chilling thought.
That's a real concern in the digital age.
Okay, so what's the second one?
The second one is potential harm.
Okay.
What are the possible negative consequences of using data in a particular way?
Yeah.
And we need to be mindful of the potential for discrimination, manipulation, the erosion of privacy.
So even if the intentions are good,
Yeah,
there can be unintended consequences.
exactly. We have to think about how the data could be used to harm individuals or groups,
Mhm.
even if that's not the intended outcome.
Yeah. Okay, what's the third one?
So the third one is approximate transparency.
Mm-hmm.
So can we understand how the data is being used?
Okay.
And what decisions are being made based on that data?
Yeah.
Is there oversight to ensure that it's being used fairly and ethically?
So it's not just about whether the data is accurate, it's about
Yeah.
whether we can understand how it's being used and why.
Exactly. We need to be able to see the logic behind the algorithms
Okay,
and hold those using the data accountable.
cool. Okay, what's number 4?
Number 4 is data quality.
Okay.
How reliable and accurate is the data?
Yeah.
Where did it come from?
Hmm.
How is it collected?
Garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly.
Okay, and the last one.
The fifth and final one is potential redress. What options do individuals have if they believe they've been negatively affected by the use of data? Can they challenge those decisions? Is there a process for correcting errors?
So it's about having mechanisms in place to ensure accountability and fairness.
Exactly. And I think all 5 of these variables are relevant when we're thinking about the ethics of analytic activism.
Absolutely.
So given everything we've discussed,
Yeah.
where does analytic activism fall on this ethical spectrum?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Well, according to Karpf's framework, it generally poses a lower risk
Okay.
than many other forms of digital listening.
Okay.
Especially those involving government or large corporations.
Okay, so that's reassuring.
Yeah,
But it doesn't mean we should let our guard down entirely.
of course not.
Right.
It's important to be aware of the potential pitfalls
Yeah.
and demand transparency and accountability from the organizations using our data.
Okay.
And we also need to be mindful of the clickbait challenge
Yeah.
that we discussed earlier.
Yeah. And ensure that organizations are focusing on the issues that matter most, not just the ones that generate the most clicks.
So it's about striking a balance between being data informed,
Yes.
but also staying true to our values and principles.
Exactly. Data is a powerful tool,
Yeah.
but it needs to be used responsibly and ethically.
So how can we as individuals ensure that our data is being used ethically? What can we do to hold these organizations accountable?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And one that we'll explore in more detail in the next part of our deep dive.
Ooh, a cliffhanger.
Yes.
Okay, I'm excited to learn more.
I am too.
This is great stuff.
I'm glad you're enjoying it.
I am.
Cool.
Okay. We'll be back soon with more on analytic activism and how to navigate the ethical challenges of this new digital world.
Sounds good.
Stay tuned.
So it's all about becoming more informed and empowered digital citizens.
Okay, I'm ready to take action. What can we do?
First, be aware of what data you're sharing and who you're sharing it with. Read privacy policies, even though they can be long and confusing.
Oh, privacy policies are so boring.
I know they can be a bit dry,
Yeah.
but they contain important information about how companies collect, use, and share your data.
Yeah.
So it's worth taking the time to understand what you're agreeing to.
Okay. Point taken. What else can we do?
Be mindful of what you post and share online.
Okay.
Remember that once something is out there, it can be difficult to erase completely.
Yeah, it's like the old saying, think before you post.
Exactly. And be selective about who you follow and the content you engage with.
Okay.
Support organizations and individuals who are transparent about their data practices and align with your values.
So do your research.
Yeah.
Choose wisely.
Yes.
Don't just blindly follow the crowd.
That's right. And if you're concerned about a particular organization's data practices, reach out and ask them about it.
Okay.
You have a right to know how your data is being used.
So be proactive.
Yes.
Ask questions.
Yes.
And demand transparency.
Exactly. You can also support organizations that are working to protect digital privacy and promote ethical data practices.
Like the Electronic Frontier Foundation or the ACLU.
Precisely, those organizations are fighting to ensure that our rights are protected in the digital age.
Cool. So be informed, be engaged,
Yes.
and be an advocate for your own digital rights.
Yes.
It sounds like we have a lot of power as individuals
We do.
to shape how our data is used.
Yeah. And remember, you're not alone in this.
Yeah.
Millions of people care about these issues.
Yeah.
And together we can make a difference.
That's a really empowering message.
Yeah.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by all this,
Yeah.
technology and data collection.
Absolutely.
But we have a voice,
You do.
and we can use it to demand change.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate the power of collective action.
Yeah.
When we come together and raise our voices, we can hold these powerful institutions accountable.
Absolutely. Okay, so before we wrap up, I want to revisit that concept,
Okay.
the clickbait challenge that we discussed earlier.
Uh-huh.
You mentioned that advocacy groups might be
Mm.
tempted to prioritize campaigns that generate a lot of clicks and likes,
Right.
even if those campaigns aren't addressing the most pressing issues.
Yes.
So can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, it's a real concern in the world of online activism.
Yeah.
The ease of taking action online,
Right.
clicking a like button, signing a petition, sharing a post,
Yeah.
can sometimes lead organizations to focus on those easy wins
Right.
rather than tackling the complex systemic issues that require more sustained effort and deeper engagement.
That's like the difference between a sprint and a marathon.
Exactly.
Right.
Clicktivism might get you a quick burst of attention, but real change often requires a long-term commitment.
Yeah, and I think this is where Karpf's distinction between revealed preferences
Yes.
and meta preferences becomes really important.
Yes, very important.
Okay, so remind me what those terms mean again.
So revealed preferences are what people actually do online, what they click on, what they share, what petitions they sign. Meta preferences are their deeper values and priorities,
Okay.
which may not always align with their online behavior.
Right, so someone might sign a petition about climate change because it popped up on their Facebook feed,
Right.
but their true priorities might lie elsewhere, like affordable health care or education.
Precisely. And for advocacy groups, the challenge is to strike a balance between responding to those revealed preferences, what people are clicking on and engaging with,
Right.
and addressing those deeper meta preferences, even if they're not as clickable.
Yeah, that sounds like a really tough balancing act.
It is, and it requires organizations to be really thoughtful about how they use data and to avoid the temptation to simply chase clicks and likes.
So it's not just about being data-driven, it's about being value-driven.
Exactly. And I think a good example of an organization trying to navigate this challenge is avalaws.org.
Oh, I've heard of Avalaws.
Yeah,
They're a global advocacy group, right?
that's right. And one of the things they do is conduct an annual membership survey to understand their members' priorities for the coming year.
So they're not just looking at what petitions are getting the most signatures.
Yeah,
They're actually asking their members what issues matter most to them.
exactly. They want to get a sense of those deeper meta preferences, even if they don't always align with what's trending online.
So they're going beyond the data.
Yeah. What's interesting is that the AVA's members specifically requested that the survey results not be treated as binding mandates.
Oh, so they want the organization to use their judgment and expertise.
Yes.
Even if it contradicts the online data.
Exactly. It suggests that even the members themselves recognize the limitations of revealed preferences
Right.
and want AVAs to be data-informed, but not data-driven.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
It seems like there's this real tension between being responsive to what supporters are clicking on and engaging with and staying true to the organization's mission and values.
Absolutely. And I think that tension is at the heart of the clickbait challenge.
Yeah.
It's a challenge that all advocacy organizations need to grapple with in the digital age.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into analytic activism,
Hmm.
what are some key takeaways for our listeners? What do we want them to remember?
I think the most important takeaway is that data is a powerful tool.
Yeah.
But it's just that, a tool. It can be used for good or for bad, and it's up to us as individuals and as a society
Yeah.
to ensure that it's used responsibly and ethically.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It's not enough to simply be aware of how data is being used.
Right.
We need to actively engage in the conversation
Yes,
and demand transparency and accountability from those who hold our data.
exactly. And we need to be mindful of the potential pitfalls of a purely data-driven approach. Data can tell us a lot, but it can't tell us everything.
Right.
We need to use it in conjunction with human judgment,
Yeah.
critical thinking, a deep understanding of the issues we're trying to address.
It's about finding that sweet spot
Yeah.
where data and human insight intersect.
Precisely, and that's where the real magic happens.
I love that. Okay, so to sum up, analytic activism has the potential to transform the way we engage in politics and advocacy.
Yeah.
But it's crucial to approach it with a critical eye,
Yes.
to be aware of the ethical considerations,
Yeah.
and to remember that data is a tool that should serve our values,
Yes.
not the other way around.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, one final question for our listeners.
Okay.
Now that you know a bit more about how this all works, how do you feel about those like buttons and online petitions? Are they powerful tools for change or just a distraction from the real work of building a better world?
It's a complex question with no easy answers.
Yeah.
But it's one that we all need to grapple with as we navigate the ever-evolving landscape of digital activism.
Yeah, it is a complex question.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's no easy answer
Right.
to whether those online actions are slacktivism or a powerful force for change.
Yeah. Right.
But I'm curious to know, like, what do you think?
Well, I think it's important to remember that online actions can be a valuable first step
Okay.
towards greater involvement.
Okay.
Like, for example, signing an online petition might introduce someone to a new issue or organization, which could then lead them to take further action offline.
Right. So it's like a gateway to deeper engagement.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
And let's not forget that online actions can sometimes have a real impact,
Yep.
especially when they're part of a larger, well-organized campaign.
I've definitely seen that, like, sometimes a viral petition or a trending hashtag
Yeah,
can really, like, put pressure on decision makers
right.
and force them to take notice of an issue
Yeah.
that they might have otherwise ignored.
Right. Think about the Me Too movement.
So, yeah,
That started online and had a profound impact on our culture and our institutions.
that's a great example.
Yeah.
It shows that online activism can be a powerful force for social change.
Yeah, it can be, but I think it's important to be realistic about its limitations as well.
Okay.
Online actions alone are rarely enough to bring about, like, significant lasting change.
All right.
They need to be combined with offline organizing, advocacy, and political pressure.
So it's not an either-or situation.
Right.
It's about using both online and offline tools
Yes.
strategically and effectively.
Exactly. And I think that brings us back to Karpf's argument
Okay.
about the importance of organizing over simply mobilizing.
Right. Okay, remind me. What's the difference between those two concepts again?
Yeah, so mobilizing is about getting lots of people to take a specific action quickly,
Okay.
like signing a petition or attending a rally. It's about generating that burst of energy and attention.
Right.
Organizing, on the other hand, is about building deeper, more sustainable relationships
Okay.
within communities and developing leadership that can drive long-term change.
So it's that sprint versus marathon analogy again.
Exactly. Mobilizing might get you quick results, but organizing is what builds lasting power.
So if someone really wants to make a difference on an issue they care about,
Yeah.
simply clicking a like button or signing an online petition,
Yeah.
it's not enough.
It's a start, but it's only a start.
Okay.
To create lasting change, we need to go beyond those superficial actions and engage in deeper, more meaningful ways.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But for those of us who aren't activists or organizers,
Right.
it can be hard to know where to start.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to get more involved
Yeah.
but doesn't know how?
I would say start by finding an organization or cause you're passionate about.
Okay.
And then reach out to them.
Okay.
Ask how you can get involved.
Hmm.
Most organizations are eager for volunteers and supporters.
Yeah,
And they'll be happy to connect you with opportunities to make a difference.
that's great advice. And don't be afraid to start small.
Exactly.
right? Like, even small actions can have a ripple effect.
Absolutely. Every little bit helps. And remember, change doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, commitment, and a lot of hard work.
Well, I think that's a great note to end on.
Yeah.
Data can be a powerful tool for change,
Mm-hmm.
but it's important to remember that real change happens
Yeah.
when people come together, organize, and work toward a common goal.
I agree.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into analytic activism.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We hope you learned something new,
I hope so.
and we'll continue to think critically about how data and technology are shaping our world.
Yes.
Until next time, keep diving deep.